Ladies and gentlemen, I kindly ask you to come back to your seats. I kindly ask you to finish up any conversation you're going through right now. Here's what's going to happen now. We're going to have 3 founders, Latvian founders, that started here and grew really fast. We're going to have Sonarworks, we're going to have Nordigen, and our final one, I believe, is Maigen, or Maigen, as you guys like to. Apparently, Latvians like the ending gen, or gen. These 3 dudes are pretty cool. One of them, actually 2 of them, play a guitar. One of them is an avid, he's a crazy wakeboarder, as in he jumps. So they actually have a life, not just the startup life. Now, I believe our first speaker is Rolands, if I'm not mistaken, from Nordigen. Now, Rolands, well, this man, he's making sure that freelancers are able to get a loan from a bank, and he's doing that through credit scoring, fair credit scoring. And that's something exciting for me. He's going to talk about that. Now, Rolands, you will have 15 minutes. Please come on stage, and a warm hand of applause for this man, please.
Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm Rolands. Just trying to get some slides on. Yeah, we're here. How many of you are thinking of starting a company anytime soon, anytime in the future? 2, 5, 6, 10 people? My third, okay, couple of people, not the most. I see some familiar faces, people that are already starting companies, pretty cool. I wanted to share the story to how we started a while ago. For those of you just thinking of doing that, I'd love to inspire you. For those of you consciously planning not to start a company, I'll give you all the arguments of why you are totally right. Starting a company is almost always a very bad idea. It's messy, it's hard, but it's also, then again, it's pretty cool. About Nordigen, in very short, what we do is we're trying to build the credit score of the future. We work with banks and lenders, and we believe the credit score of the future is a score that captures real financial behavior of a person. And this financial behavior is often found in the person's bank account. So this is how we build the credit score. Now, if you're not very familiar with how the financial system works, if you're not familiar with banking or lending, there's the only thing to understand what we do, the only thing you have to know is that a fact is that banks in Europe reject about 90% of all loan applications, 90. That's a lot of rejected loan applications. What we're trying to make sure is that banks reject less loan applicants because of the wrong reasons. For example, banks find it very hard to understand the gig economy. So if you're driving for Uber or Taxify, it's very likely you're not going to get a loan at a bank. Also, if you're renting out an apartment professionally on Airbnb, banks don't really see that as a real, regular business. But the worst case is for people who work abroad. For example, if you built your credit history in one country and then you move to another, you can't transfer that credit history, you have to start from scratch, which in Europe just doesn't make sense. People work abroad all the time. So we're trying to fix this problem, we're trying to address this issue, and surprisingly, this hasn't been done before. We're among the very first ones to actually look into that. So where we are right now, we're 18 people. We're working with more than 30 financial institutions across 12 countries, but it took us a while to get here, and it started really in 2013, and it started in Garage 48. I went there. I don't know if you're familiar with Garage 48. It's this amazing place where you have 48 hours to build something really cool. Usually, because 48 hours is not a lot of time, people build these very small, fun things, you know, social apps, maybe quick API connections. But my co-founder Robert, who's actually also my coursemate, he's sitting right there with the Nordigen jacket. He wasn't familiar with the concept of fun and small things. He came to Garage 48 with the idea to disrupt airline industry there at the Garage 48, which is a crazy idea, to say the least. His idea was to build a secondary platform for airline tickets. And the pitch was the following, that if you perhaps buy an airline ticket today, and then realize, oh no, you can't fly, and that ticket is essentially lost. That money is lost. But Robert figured out that you could sell that ticket to someone else, and then that person would pay for that ticket, but also the name change fee on that ticket. This could create a secondary market for airline tickets. And we decided perhaps it's a good idea to try and build a prototype in Garage 48. We did the best we could. We pitched the idea. We felt very confident. We failed miserably. No one liked the idea. In fact, we didn't even get any of the prizes that were there. There were 5 prizes. We didn't get any of those prizes. A couple of days later, we decided to get together, and we discussed the case, but we realized that it's not us that are wrong, it's Garage 48 that are wrong. They just don't get it. What we need to do, we need to talk to some of the big guys. We need to talk to investors. They're going to get this idea, and it's going to take off. And where do you talk to investors? You talk to investors at Techchill. So 2015, we applied to Techchill to pitch on the big stage the idea of the secondary market for airline tickets. We had prepared heavily. We knew all of the right answers. We knew the market size, the unique value proposition. We had calculated the CAC to LTV ratios. We knew it all. We were pitched on the stage. We felt confident. The results came in really bad. Judges just didn't get the idea. It seemed just absolutely distant. And not just that, we spoke to a couple of investors, and investors were like, I don't know why this hasn't been done before. How can a couple of guys from Latvia do this? Not sure. It's definitely not a good idea for us to invest. But good luck, guys. We felt pretty bad, to say the least. A couple of days later, again we met up. We talked about the case. We realized that nah, it's the Techchill that's wrong. We should talk to someone that understands airplanes, man. We should talk with, the industry. So we decided to reach out to Air Baltic. We didn't know anyone at Air Baltic. We opened up the laptop, typed in a couple of names on LinkedIn, gathered a couple of people, sent out a couple of emails, radio silence. A couple of days later, we realized, okay, let's just find someone that we know, perhaps an acquaintance. We got someone that led to a couple of more introductions. That led to a couple of meetings. Step by step, we got a meeting. Those meetings turn out to someone has been interested. We pitched the idea. We prepare some materials. We build a business case. We get an email that says, all right, boys, we're going to discuss this idea at the board level in a board meeting, or at least that's what we were told, and we felt really excited. Finally, after so much hard work, finally we're getting there. And a couple of days later, we get an email, "Dear gentlemen," we're like, okay. We discussed this question in our board meeting. We're like, okay, perfect. We've decided not to continue looking into this case. And at that stage, it's been a year already since Garage 48. We've invested a lot of time. We've prepared so many PowerPoint presentations. They take up these massive folders already, so many Excel calculations. A lot of Skyscanner has been scraped for us to calculate the prices for the tickets. And all of that was down the drain. And meanwhile, the world was moving on. And all of our friends were working at finance. And peer-to-peer lending was just taking off, and once we realized that airline industry is perhaps not ripe for disruption yet, we turned to finance, and we started talking to those friends, and we saw that peer-to-peer lending is taking off. Peer-to-peer lenders were kind of like small banks, and they were thinking, where's this going? Peer-to-peer lending, what's the end game for peer-to-peer lending? They're converging to banks, and they're going to need the same stuff that banks are going to need. So what's that stuff? And we're thinking, okay, they're going to need ATMs. We should build ATMs for peer-to-peer lenders. So we set out to talk with as many peer-to-peer lenders as we could in Europe, different types of lenders, all of them alternative across Europe. We pitched the idea of ATMs, and they weren't too excited. They said that, sure, you build the stuff, we'll try it out, but no promises. We talked to manufacturers as well, and the manufacturers were a bit more excited, but we quickly realized that there's a good reason why ATMs can be only afforded by very massive banks. It's not a very cheap thing to look into. But the good thing was that because we knew so little at that stage about how this new world of lending works, we asked a lot of open-ended questions, and we kept coming back to one interesting theme, which was that it's very hard to assess riskiness of a customer. Not just the ATM stuff, not just customer acquisition, but just riskiness to figure out which customers are really good to finance, which are not that good. And we came back to the question of credit scoring, which is essentially the art of figuring out to whom you are going to lend and at what is going to be that deal to which you are offering to the customer. And this was perfect for us because we suddenly realized, hey, that this is the real need. We kept digging more and more. We spoke with more and more lenders. We kept digging inside of this case more and more. And we realized that, in fact, lenders do reject 90% of loan applications. And they're not that happy about it. They know that they're leaving good customers, but there's nothing they can do about it. What was more interesting, that the problem was not that they didn't know that what they're doing, but it's just that the data that they had to deal with was so bad. There was so many data formats. There was just a lot of noise. You had to have data teams to prepare the data, let alone to analyze it. And what was another cool thing was that they explicitly told us that, hey guys, if you build this, we'll pay for this. Ship it fast and we have business. And this gave us good validation that this is actually a real thing. At that point, we didn't have any solution. We just had a bunch of very pretty PowerPoint presentations. And this was good enough reason for us to look into that case to build something that was actually tangible and sellable. So we set out to build a solution that is fixed a very small niche problem, but a real problem. And that took us on a wild trip. So 2015 was Q2 was really the moment where we got our first couple of yeses from customers. Before that, it was just a bunch of no's from starting from 2013, and that gave us extra courage. And first yeses turned into first revenue. That gave us extra money to look further. We applied to Nordigen Accelerator to learn more about banks. That we leveraged to get more customers. 2016, we were able to take us from 10 customers to 20 paying customers, plus get a bank to work with us. And the rest is essentially already history, not part of starting a process, but rather about managing it. So if I don't know, hopefully to some extent this gives you inspiration, then you can definitely write down these 3 things that we learned along the way, which are our secret ingredients to starting Nordigen. First of all, you're going to hear a lot of no's, and you're going to hear no's from customers. You're going to hear no's from VCs. Many of those no's would be correct, and you would be wrong. What you have to have is a lot of optimism, perhaps too much optimism. And that's the only way to survive. What you need to do is focus on problems and focusing on fixing those problems. And the more expensive problems you identify, the more expensive the solution can be. And that leads to the second part. Whatever the idea, always focus on revenue first. And honestly, you'd be surprised how much you can do with zero coding and just having pretty PowerPoint presentations, a landing page, and a lot of manual work in the background. And that works. As long as it works, as long as you're delivering, that's good enough. And the last thing is focus. Great companies, when they lose focus, they fail. We've tried to stay on track all the time. You'll be tempted to attend all of those really cool events, and you know, Techchill is a perfect place to network, but it's really, for us, Techchill has been something that we started attending just only recently when we started hiring. So that is something that we understood pretty quickly, that there's so many events and there's so little time, you have to pick your fights. So this is how we did it. So if you have any more questions or some comments afterwards, just find me somewhere. I'll be somewhere around. Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Rolands. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Now, on this quick note, next speaker, could you please attempt to shave off around a minute. I kindly ask you to shave all 1 minute, so we'll be on time. Next speaker is Helmuts, Bems. He's a serial entrepreneur, had 3 different businesses, but he spent this past 6 years making sure that our headphones have studio quality sound. That's what he's been doing. That's a lot of sound research. Now, cool thing about him, he plays the guitar. And if he would have more time today, he would actually play this guitar in front of you. So he knows a little bit of music and actually practices some. On this note, hand of applause for this man, please.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. So is Roland still around? Because I want to challenge him for a wakeboarding session once the snow melts. Roland, are you here? All right, I'll catch him up later and challenge him for a wakeboard session as well. Who of you like the chill outside? Who of you don't like the chill outside? All right, there are more people not liking the chill. Let's try to make it more pleasant for you then. So, my main agenda is to actually share some very specific learning lessons that I've learned and that you can maybe implement when you do your cool startups. So what we do is we provide studio quality sound onto existing headphones. So it works as a software solution. It's basically you have to select the headphone that you actually use. You press a button, and then all the sound you hear is actually what the guys in the studios heard. And it's an amazing, amazing improvement in terms of the sound experience that you can have. We are solving besides just making stuff sound better, we are actually solving a bigger problem in the industry, and the problem is this. All of the sound devices, they sound different. So these are a few graphs of actually professional headphones, and they all are all over the place, so they sound different. That's a problem for a studio engineer, because when music is being created, at some point the guys are thinking, for whom am I creating this? You know, is it going to be listened back on like a Beats headphone? Is it going to be listened back on Apple earbuds? And they all sound different, so they actually cannot understand for whom to produce this music. So they end up making a compromise. The bigger picture of what we are doing is that we are creating a new standard for sound so that studios and consumers can have the same sound reference, and the studios can then make music that actually sounds best on the devices that are going to be then used to play it back. We did launch some time ago. We did launch 6 years back, and we started specifically with the recording studios. We figured out that that's the market where this is going to be appreciated the most. So at the moment, we are basically becoming a standard of what reference sound is in a studio. We have 20,000 recording studios as our customers. Among those, we have 15 Grammy-awarded engineers. For those who don't know, Grammys in music is the same as Oscars in movies. So very talented people there. And if we look at these studios, they work with probably most of the artists that you listen on a day-to-day basis. Our technology was used during Rio Olympic Games to make the music for the Olympic Games, and we've won numerous awards. And then the last bit where I tell about the company is we're doing pretty good. We're growing. We did close last year at 1.5 million in revenue. And this graph shows our usage base, which is what anybody would want to have, which is an exponentially increasing graph. And I hope it continues like that. And then it goes like, poof. So that's where we're at. So now the lessons learned, and I'll probably walk through them in a priority order. So the first is you have to be really, really devoted to what you do. And at Sonarworks, we are now over 30 people. We are really deep into music. And we have sound engineers, we have just music lovers, we have musicians. Basically, in some way, everybody is involved in music. So the picture here shows us, we did a company event where we actually set up a stage in the office. So people are working there. During the day, we are setting up the stage. And then in the evening, we were actually doing performances where all the company employees were actually on stage, performing, singing, all kind of performances. So if you are in the music business like we are, you have to love music. You can't do it if you really are not into it. So that's a big part of it. And I'll make it even more extreme. Somebody in the company has to be a total freak in the thing that you do. So in this instance, it's me. What you see here is like, this is me trying to tune my car to have a better sound. And this is basically in the living room, I do some measurements. So it's freaky, and somebody has to be that freak, because sooner or later, this is going to happen, and it's going to happen to everybody, which is the near-death experiences. So, and there's the saying, it's over only when it's over. Until that, it's not over. And you need somebody to always remind you that. I was lucky to start this company with my co-founder, Martins, and we are interchanging these roles because we have had quite a few of near-death experiences. All of you will have. And so when we're changing the roles, so sometimes I'm losing my heart and I feel like it's over, and then Martin comes in and says, no, it's over only when it's over. And then the next time we would switch places and he will lose his heart and I would like come in and try to make him more optimistic. That brings me to the next point, which is again tied to the same story. And that's a very important perspective I take when I hire people for a team. It's kind of, they have to be different people in the team. So if somebody is a visionary, you have to combine that person with somebody who is actually into details. And this works really well for me and my co-founder Martins, because I'm more of a in the clouds visionary, and Martins is always like understands the resources. He can follow up, on the timing, and so we complement each other very well. How do you know when you have such a person next to you? When you are into a discussion, you will hate the other person, because he's always like bringing me perspectives that I just really don't like. I don't like thinking that much about resources. And he's always like, whenever I fly off, he's always like brings me down and says, let's think about how we're actually going to do it. So that's a perspective I always take with all the teams, is look at who is already in the team. And then when I try to bring in new people, they have to be opposite and complementary to that person I try to team up with. This is a very important point. For startups especially, and it's the commando attitude. And the perspective is the following. The company is like a big ship that you are building. It's not very agile. It's a ship. You sail in the sea, and then you notice an island somewhere, and you have this idea, hey, let's invade this island, and let's make something happen. So the best idea is you basically park the ship, and then you send out a team of commandos into this island to basically figure out what's going on there. And that's an extremely important point. Not everybody can be a commando. So for us, we have now a team of 3 commandos whom I perfectly understand their capabilities. So the commando means you can basically send them to a conference without much preparation, and they'll come back with like amazing contacts, and they'll arrange amazing stuff that other people just don't seem to be able to arrange. So, and we've had this a lot. Just as an example, the screen gets really enlarged, so the photos get a bit pixely. So the story is the following. We were visiting Los Angeles, going to visit recording studios. And there is a district in Los Angeles that has quite a lot of recording studios. And we actually met this guy on a crossroads. So we were driving in a car and we were lost. We stopped at the red light, and there was this guy walking on the sidewalk, and we basically asked him, can you help us find this studio? Like we lost. And the guy's like, so what are you doing? And we're like, yeah, we have this technology for studios. And he was like, yeah, I want to see it. So we just stopped the car at the red light, came out, and like started pitching him while he was going to play tennis in a park. So that's one example. Another example is, that's actually, I yesterday found this picture. It's a very historic picture because that's how it all began. What this is a studio in Los Angeles. The engineer there has actually worked with Eric Clapton before, so he was a fairly famous engineer. And when I first went to Los Angeles, I didn't have any contacts, and then I contacted my network of friends on Facebook, and I asked them, hey, anybody knows a sound engineer studio in Los Angeles? We're going there, and they're supposed to have a lot of good studios. And I found out that I have a friend who played the violin, and she recorded in the studio, so she gave me this one contact. And basically, if the guy would say that, you know, that's not a good job you've done with the software, probably it would end there. But then I went to meet this guy, and he really, really liked it. And that was the first meeting we did with a proper, you know, world-class studio. And then that's his neighbor, another studio engineer. So basically what happens is you talk to this guy, he says it's cool, and then he instantly calls up his friends, and after a few minutes, other friends show up in his studios, and then by the end of the week, Martin had to come over to Los Angeles because we had so many meetings, and just every engineer we went to gave us contacts to another 3 engineers. So, and that's how it actually started. And the very big lesson learned is that you have to spend a lot of time with your end users in your market. And the in your market is very important. To give an example, we started off naturally, you know, going around in Latvia, visiting some studios. And Latvians, probably the same with most Eastern Europeans, they have this very specific mindset. When we do a demo for them, their initial kind of thinking process is there a way that I can not buy this software? Like, is there a way I can somehow, you know, walk around it and maybe do something by hand, and that would like be similar, and I would just like skip the, like, is there a way I can not pay for this? And that's a very bad kind of, it's a depressing mindset for you when you are a startup and try to actually sell something, because the first indication from market is like, hey, I don't want to pay for this. And that's, I guess, will happen mostly around Eastern Europe. And when you go to US, it's a completely different story. Their mindset is like, is it cool? If it's cool and amazing, they're just going to buy it. They don't care about how much it costs. The main thing is, like, do they got an emotional like uplift while you were there? And that completely changes your perspective. So we've spent many hours in those studios talking with these people who are very different from us. And that gave us the perspective of what it takes to actually sell them. How much time do I have? 0. I actually have many slides, so my idea was to go as much as you allow me to. So,
as much as I'd like to give you, this is very interesting. So right. I'm going to come with you here. One moment. One last message for the people here. What is your key thesis that you want to give?
Be absolutely freak about what you do. I mean, be ready to devote all of you to what you do, and be ready to sacrifice things that are important. There is a lot of talk about, you know, balance of life. I think the balance of life stuff for a startup in early stage is a complete bullshit. Like, you won't balance your life. So if you start doing a startup, be ready to sacrifice like health, relationship, you know, and everything else that goes with it. So in the first years, it's not going to be an easy journey. So that would be my, like, be ready to do that.
Be a freak.
Be a freak and be ready to sacrifice stuff.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. There's going to be a 15-minute break, but before that, thank you to all our speakers. Free case studies from Rolands to Helmuts. So one moment, we have one more, pardon me, if I'm not mistaken. One more, pardon me. Now, Maigen, if I'm not mistaken. Now, you were into wakeboarding, if I'm not mistaken. You're the guy with the wakeboarding. We had a bit of a mix-up. Now, 15 minutes. Will you be able to fit into that? 15 minutes. All right, let's do it. Please, on stage.
So I'm going to time myself 15 minutes.
Right.
Hey, guys. I'm standing here today with a lot of love and exhaustion. I just wanted to share that I just had a baby girl born a couple days ago. Maigen is the most respected email marketing automation platform in the world for agencies and small, medium-sized companies. We send over 30 billion emails per year. We make more than $10 million revenue, and we have tens of thousands paying customers. That is my vision. I'm nowhere close to that. And every day, that is what motivates me to get up at 5 a.m. My spirit is tested every day because failure is what a CEO of a company has to deal with every day. So Eric Ries, who is the founder of startup, the lean startup methodology, he's participated at different companies like GE and GE Ventures that has internal accelerator within GE. And the CEO of that GE Ventures had a cup on his table that said failure is not an option. And he says, how can you run a startup accelerator when you are not ready to fail? So your cup, your coffee cup should say, I eat failure for breakfast every day. And that is what this is all about. When I started the company 8 years ago, I didn't realize how much shit I will have to deal with every day. And that is what this whole story is about. My wife just asked me this morning, where do I get that resilience to failure? And I remember when I was 21 years old, I lived in Hong Kong at that moment. And I remember that old wooden tram and these skyscrapers, these glass skyscrapers with little tram going through, and I was reading that one book that changed my life, and that's something I can give to you as well. It's called Thick Face, Black Heart by Ching-Nin Su. I hope that's something that you will look into. But let me walk through some of the 3 parts of Maigen's business and how I see I'm failing every day and how do I eat that frog every morning. Let's hope that this is going to work. Can we switch slides, please? Next. Right. So these 2 guys, everybody should know them. Little Steve Jobs and Wozniak, right? What's interesting about their story is that Steve Jobs, he was good at something, and he was good at building products and selling them. He had aptitude for what he did. Only when he was fired, and after 30 years, he realized he loved Apple and he loved what he did. And this is a similar story of how Maigen started. I can say that our product is a calculated move. So it's an email marketing platform. When we decided that we're going to build something, we were good at building websites. We were good at building products on software, not like web products. But we defined some criteria for our product, which was SaaS, as a recurring revenue business model in a growing niche, and that's in email marketing. And we just sat down, we started building a product. I didn't realize how many problems failures you will have to meet in these many years. And one more or less rhetorical question. Do you know how many files can a single folder contain? Does anybody? No. Well, we met that problem. We failed by identifying it early, and it's around 120,000 files within a single folder that can kill your system for 24 hours. Because there's no way for you to pick up your servers because the folders are full. And you cannot... So this took us a whole day, 24 hours to fix. We lost business, we got complaints, we had to deal with shit. And that was a failure that I learned a lot from early. And I communicated these kind of failures with my customers, and they appreciated that. I got complaints, I had to reimburse some of my business customers. This is just one of the failures. Another product, the core business solution for us is email delivery. So when you run any software business, you should maintain or hold any core business functionalities within your company's walls. So email delivery is something that we manage ourselves internally. And this is the biggest and number one problem for our business, because it's like a search engine optimization. You simply can't guarantee email delivery. It depends from too many different factors. But at least we maintain our own core infrastructure within the company. We had to learn every time we did something wrong. But that lesson is what you build upon. Another thing regarding product is that no matter how good your people are, they will have a certain level of knowledge. I invested around 150,000 euros in a year and a half in rebuilding my product, and we failed at it. We had to kill everything that we did for a year and a half and went back to the old technologies. We hired consultants, external consultants, that told me that my code is shit. I will never be able to sell it. And I felt like a failure for a couple of days, but when I went back and I tried to build on that experience. So what happened next was one of my senior developers, he figured out, after 7 years of working on the platform, how we can optimize the existing code and the MySQL database so it runs 4 to 5 times faster and takes 2 times less server resources. And I asked him, why did you not come up with this 7 years ago? Or when we started rebuilding the platform a year and a half ago, we started looking at NoSQL technology. We started rebuilding the code, and he didn't say anything. He said, I didn't know. I didn't have the experience. I didn't have the understanding. So he had to go through a year and a half of kind of boot camp workout to really realize that he can fix something without changing technologies. That was a big learning for us. Another big part of our business is globalization. We started our company in English first, and I think this is an advantage for a Latvian startup that we speak at least 3 languages as we are like 20 years old. So when we started, we built Maigen in English first, and we localized in Latvian, and we localized in Russian. And that is still big. Today, English-speaking markets is only half of our business, like US, UK, India, Australia, and the rest comes from non-English-speaking countries. So we expanded into Latvian and Russia. We have a pretty big team in Russia. We have people in Iran. We have people in China. And what we realized that localization is actually a strategy for us that we can sell in the markets that are more closed. So we started selling into China. That was our first kind of experiment. A coincidence, an Indian Chinese guy reached out to us, said, I would like to represent you in China. And we didn't think about it. We didn't consider China, but then we looked at it, and it seemed like an incredible opportunity. So 3 years or 4 years ago, we said, okay, let's do it. So we went through the whole localization, rebuilding the system into Chinese. Similar story happened to Iran. It was a coincidence. A friend of a friend got introduced, and they said, I would love to sell Maigen. So we did that. I can say that we have failed in many different things, and localization, as on the product side, was easy. But bringing that service to these countries has been a big struggle, and we have failed there a lot. So we're pulling away a little bit from losing focus. It required, when you localize, it requires your focus when you have to participate in that market actively, either yourself. You have to spend at least 6 months going, flying back and forth and being present at events like these, or just being in the market so you understand it better. You have to invest at least 50 to 100,000 euros just to test that you can make some difference. And that's something that we failed at the beginning. So we spent 3 to 4 years and with mediocre results, and I don't have my time. Now I have another baby girl to take care of, and I don't have time to fly over to these different countries, and I have to close the markets. And that's something that if anybody wants to consider different jurisdictions, you have to be ready to invest your own time and money to make successful business there. And another point, can we switch over? Nothing working. Another point, which is big part of a business, you have to have a team that is ready or is competent in what you do at the level that you're at. When you are at a startup level, I wasn't planning to be a CEO. I wanted to build a product and offer it to people. I had to learn to become a leader just 3-4 years ago when I returned from my long years in Asia, and that was a challenge for myself. I failed a lot, and I fail every day still. I see that people are not communicating right, or I see that they are not educated enough to bring us to that next level. When you start as a startup, most of the times your people are at level 1. You hire people that are your level, and they are excited about what you do. But if you want to scale, then you have to bring people, either you have to educate them to bring you up to the second level, and that is a lot of learning that they have to go through. So we do workshops, we do skills labs internally, we read books, we do a lot of kind of meetings, but some people simply don't want to learn, they don't want to change. So you have to look at level 2 people. You have to hire different expertise and bring them into the team. Right now we're going through this kind of scaling and growth stage where I can recommend the book that's called Scaling Up. And that has a lot of practical worksheets and methodologies that you can implement in your team. And one of those was top grading hiring method. So it's a way you can spend up to 3 to 4 hours in a job interview to find the right people for the right managerial positions. We hired very fast at the beginning, and not always they were the right people for the right place. And we pay the cost right now. So I'm hiring slower. I have like 5 positions open, but I'm not rushing to fulfill them because I want the right people for the level 2, for level 3. So that is very important for you guys. I want you to leave you with something interesting. This is how I look at life. It's glass half full or half empty, and we could argue about that for a whole day, but for me, failure is equal happiness, and you might ask how, and I will tell you with the simple formula. I'm not sure. Yes, how? Can you click next one, please? So failure is equal learning. Otherwise, you're ignorant if you're not learning from that. And learning equals growth. If you are considering your learning, you're growing, and probably learning is you are not making these mistakes in the future. Growth equals success. Obviously, if you are growing, you're succeeding at your life. And the next one, and success is happiness. And next one, and therefore failure is happiness. And this is how I look at my life. I fail every day. I eat that for breakfast, but I'm happy by doing that. I'm excited every day for the failures that I have to eat. And I just wanted to leave you with my kind of motto for life. It's live your life with arms wide open. Encourage that change and accept failure and be happy. Thank you, guys.